What is the craziest thing you have seen or witnessed in public? I saw a guy and a girl walk from a bar to a Jeep. He opened the door, passenger door, bent her, lifted her dress, and start fucking her right in the street. About couple minutes later, another guy stumbles out the bar, yells at both of them, and they stop. Comes over and punches the guy right in the face, sending him flying. The girl yells something, a guy bleeding on the ground, and the new guy bends her over and start fucking her without any further discussion. The first guy, the loser of the fight with a bloody nose, picks up and leaves while the girl starts screaming to the new guy to fuck her harder. I was like, WTF did I just witness? Middle of a street. A full-grown man throwing a legendary temper tantrum and knocking stuff over in a Skechers store because his mom told him to buy his own shoes. A man being prepared to be fed to a lion in sub-Saharan Africa. I volunteered in wildlife conservation there for a summer, and while I thought our efforts were good, it is weird to me how in their culture, poaching is seemingly seen as worse than murder. The WWF might be supportive of some of these extreme efforts too, which has generated controversy. Anyways, yeah, there were some places where if you were caught poaching, you were going to be fed to a lion. This guy was being fitted for a breastplate and a metal helmet with bars over the face with the goal of making sure the lion couldn't kill him too quickly. The Rangers said all they needed was final approval from a local judge, and it would be carried out the next day. The guy looked scared out of his mind. I was getting my tire fixed and sitting in my truck with my two young children. I heard a strange noise coming from the road behind the truck. I looked back and saw an older Jeep Cherokee flying through the air. It was completely surreal and seemed to happen in slow motion. It flew past my truck and landed on a flatbed tire truck parked about 25 away. It burst into flames. Dude who was changing my tire yelled at me to get the kids out and ran over to help. I went into the little waiting area with the kids and I saw him pull a woman out of the Jeep. Her hair was on fire and she was screaming. He put a coat or something on her to put out the flames. Then he brought her into the waiting room, told me to watch her, and ran back out with a fire extinguisher. I was the only person in there. It was a small tire shop, and they were all out trying to prevent an explosion. I was alone with my kids and the screaming lady. She seemed to be in shock and maybe drunk. I told her to lay down on the floor and she kept yelling, so I put my baby with my toddler and went over to her. I basically yelled at her really mean to lay TF down. I said your ducking neck might be broken or something, and she did. Then the fire trucks arrived and they took it from there. She lived. I got my tire fixed. Was having a new exhaust put onto my Subaru by a small specialty shop in Buffalo, NY. We dropped it off and then said we would just go walk around for a couple hours till it was done. Staff advised us not to as it was a rough area. We were 9 in and from Canada. What's the worst that could happen? After walking through a couple blocks of burned out hoses, and straight out of the movies for us, Ghetto W decided to turn around and get back to the shop ASAP. We walk around a corner only to see a group of 5 large, fugish-looking young black men ahead of us. They notice us, turn, and walk in our direction. Instant brick shitting. Do we run? Do we plead for our lives? We decide to do the Canadian thing and just keep walking like nothing's going to happen. The gang reaches us after a few seconds, kind of does a half circle around the two of us. There is no escape, only robbery or death. What appears to be the leader makes contact. Yo, we got a question for you guys. We sheepishly reply, yay? What's the plural form of penis? Penises? I think so. One of the other gang members blurts out, see, I told you, man. As they all kind of laugh and thank us, tell us to have a good day. That is my only encounter with American street youth. I'm not sure if this counts, but one time on the NYC subway I sat across from a stranger with a very distinct outfit, Vans, who got off at a totally different stop from me. Later that same day, I ran into them again 3 separate times at 3 completely different, far apart, non-touristy places. Had a pretty full day. I'm 100 sure it was the same person. What are the odds? I was at a work conference in a hotel, though it was local, so we didn't stay at the hotel, just clients. We left one of the clients' hotel room at like 1 p.m. and walked to the elevators, and we see a guy making out with a girl in a skirt up against the wall, pretty heavily. We keep walking down pretty long the hall, and I think what the heck is around his ankles. Oh, those are his pants, and they are not just making out. Just as I have that thought, he must have noticed us not really looking at us, and he pulls out and pulls up his pants. We would have seen way less if he had just kept on. The kicker is that as we passed, one of the women I was with smacks him lightly on the shit and says, don't stop on our account. I once saw a guy dressed as a medieval knight, complete with armor and sword, buying a single banana at the grocery store, and no one batted an eye. I watched 2 drunken homeless guys get into a tire iron fight in Oakland. They were straight up sword fighting with tire irons. Car in front of me hit and killed a pedestrian. He was driving under the speed limit, nothing reckless. We just came up over a hill and the guy was in the street. The pedestrian was probably dead before he hit the ground. He slid into the ditch as the driver came to a stop down the road. Between the driver's wailing cry and the bones protruding out of the pedestrian's fingers, and that blank stare, I have a lot burned into my memory from that day. Luckily I had a dash cam, and it showed clearly that the driver didn't do anything wrong, plus the pedestrian was known for walking the area and drifting into the street suddenly. I visited a friend in Ukraine some time back long before the war. We were walking her dogs and came to a dog park and saw a man tied to a tree right next to a dog waste bin. He had what appeared to be dog feces smeared on his hair and face. There was a sign above his head in Ukrainian. I was shocked, but she acted like nothing too out of ordinary was going on and just said that's an animal abuser. This is what happens to them here. She didn't want to seem like she was sympathetic to him, so she did what everyone else there was doing without making any big fuss about it. When she picked up her dog's waste, she went over to the tree, turned it inside out, and smeared it on him. She went for the neck, I guess feeling a little merciful. When we were walking away, I turned back to see a middle-aged woman with 2 German shepherds on leashes walking slowly over to him, and he gave a loud shout, which my friend told me was basically no, please, as he struggled against his restraints. She gave those baggies a big long smear all over his nose and mouth area. There was a police car in the nearby parking lot too, I guess making sure nobody got too carried away, but it seemed like a semi-sanctioned punishment. Openly weeping while carrying a bagpipe while walking the streets of San Jose, California. I saw a drive-by punching when I was 17 or 18. I was standing out front of a bowling alley with a covered area in front of the door with a small crowd of people. A lifted pickup pulled up to the door, the passenger hopped out and jacked one of the guys standing there right in the jaw. Then he jumped back in the truck and they took off. The dude that got hit just stood back up and started talking to the people he was standing near, with no acknowledgement or reference to what happened. It was bizarre. Super drunk guy dropped his trousers in a busy street and tried, but failed to squeeze out a poop. He was really straining. In a seaside arcade, a smartly dressed old gentleman dropped his trousers and had a watery shit next to the basketball game. Saw a guy propose to a girl. She said no. He shrugged and proposed to her friend. She said yes. Plot twist, it was a social experiment. Having lunch in Hamburg, Germany, we were sitting outside under an awning. It was pouring rain. Guy walks over wearing what looked like a Popeye rain getup, walks to the corner of the awning, pulls down on it a bit and takes a drink of the runoff, then screams like someone jammed him with a hot poker. A murder. I lived in South America, I was born there, don't live there anymore. I was at my apartment at home, playing video game, middle of afternoon, it was my day off, I worked in shifts. I heard a crazy commotion in the streets. I went to look through the window and saw a guy running down the street holding something. It seemed like a brown paper bag. Then another guy came out of the bakery on the corner and just shot the running guy in the back, twice. He fell. The shooter approached pointing the gun still, kicked the fallen guy to turn him around. People were screaming in the street. A short while after police came, they greeted the armed guy like they were old friends. Ambulance came and took the fallen guy, covered him in a sheet to his head. Yeah, dead. I saw the whole fucking thing. Couldn't play first-person shooters for a couple of years. A year or so I moved out of the country. I wanted to have kids, I was already married, and this was no place to raise kids. Edit, typos. This is more crazy things heard than seen, but I've come across a lot on a college campus. Just off the top of my head on my way to class I passed 2 girls talking. One girl was telling the other he did not do that. Are you serious right now? Girl, run. Run like your tampon string is on fire. In the library again, there were 2 girls talking and one was telling the other in almost comically white superior tone. Random dicks may fill you up, but they'll leave you feeling empty. In the hallway, before class, a girl told another about our prof. I so would. He looks like he'd snatch a bitch's tampon out with his teeth. I watched a Ford Expedition hit a bicyclist. The bicyclist flipped a few times and landed hard. He jumped up, grabbed his bike and tried to start pedaling away, but the bike was mangled. Before he got on the bike he looked me directly in the eyes and just started screaming. It was just constant AHH. Now I realize he was experiencing shock as he attempted to leave. I looked up and the passenger and driver of the expedition were swapping spots, and they tore off too. Multiple cops showed up, but the 2 sets of people involved were long gone and no one had gotten the plate number. I still think about it all the time.